So today, with the Meshuggah Rebbe, we have some philosophy, comments on current events. Probably shouldn't talk about politics and current events because it'll probably get me in trouble, but I'm going to do it anyway. So in the news today is December 6, 2017, Tes Zion Kislev, 5778. And the big news today is that President Trump is expected to announce that the U.S. will officially recognize Jerusalem as the capital of Israel and announce plans that the American embassy will eventually move to Jerusalem from Tel Aviv, where it's been. And of course, predictably, the usual suspects are all in an uproar that this is going to be an impediment to peace, and this is going to be an insult to Islam, and blah, 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 yakety yak, and it's etc., etc., etc. And we hear this from all the usual suspects, the UN, the countries of Europe, the Muslims themselves, of course, are all aghast and threatening days of rage and riots and the whole works. Nothing we haven't heard before. But I think this is a very interesting thing. We also hear it from the Jews. Of course, all of our liberal Jewish friends are terrified that, it's going to cause violence, it's going to cause this, it's going to cause that. We shouldn't antagonize the Arabs, we shouldn't stir up the pot. I hear this from Orthodox Jews as well. And this bothers me. The Reform and Conservative Jews, what they think about things that are related to Jewish matters is irrelevant to me. So, see my other video about my thoughts on American non-orthodoxy. It's also global non-orthodoxy, but most non-orthodox Jews in the world are in America. The problem I have here is that Jerusalem and the Temple Mount are the center of Judaism, of course. We daven 3 times a day at Shemona Esrei, asking Hashem to rebuild Jerusalem and to return the temple service to its rightful place. We say after every meal and benching, Uvnei Yerushalayim Eir Kodesh B'mehera B'yameinu, rebuild Jerusalem, our holy city, quickly in our days. We say all the time, many, many places throughout the davening, as prayers for the sake of Jerusalem, for the sake of the Temple Mount, for the sake of the restore the temple, restore us to Jerusalem, all these things. And we've been, for most of our history, since the destruction of the Second Temple in the year 70, we were in no position to do anything about this. And then back in 1948, so it's 1800 and change years after the destruction of the temple, there's a declaration of the independence for the state of Israel, and we got a piece of Jerusalem. Not the old city, not the Temple Mount. This was a start. And this is where the problem is that the Torah itself, all of the prophets promise over and over and over and over again that restoring Jerusalem to us, the start of the temple, everything, this is central to the messages of most of the prophets in the Torah. And our religious Jewish friends, they say, daven this every day. Restore us to Jerusalem. Restore the temple service. Restore to bring us back. Bnei Yerushalayim. would say it's so Shavas avoda l'dvir Pesach, it says in Shemona, is return in service to the hallways of your temple. You know, the Nevi'im. Let's look at Zechariah in Parakid Beis, chapter 12. The whole thing. It says this whole long prophecy about Jerusalem being the stone of agony to the Gentiles, to the non-Jews, that the Jews will and at the house of Yehuda, God will remember the house of Yehuda and all the Jews, and then the Jews will have to fight for Yerushalayim and for the temple, and then Zechariah says in the next parak, he says that the common soldier in Yehuda will be like the mighty men of old, and then the leadership will be like divine. The house of David will be like divine beings, but like the angel of the Lord before them. It's like Yerushalayim is something, and Jerusalem and the Temple Mount, this is something that is worth fighting for. It's worth taking a risk for. This is the center of our religion, people. You take a risk for this. You fight for this. And I hear over and over again, even from religious people, we should stay away from Har HaBayis because it annoys the Arabs, and then they're going to cause riots and ruckus, and people are going to get hurt, and we shouldn't. They shouldn't, say that Yerushalayim is our capital, and because it's going to annoy people, it's going to antagonize them, and there'll be riots, and there's going to be fighting, there's trouble, and people might get hurt. Well, isn't the very sacred core of our religion, our sacred city, and our most holy site, aren't these things that are worth fighting over? We daven for this for almost 2,000 years, every single day, to have Yerushalayim and have the temple. And the Medrash says in the Gemara that in every generation there's opportunity for the redemption, the final redemption to come about. Well, 1948 was the beginning of something. It was an opportunity, and it was a success, and we got back a piece of what we've been davening for, Yerushalayim, a little bit. We didn't have all of it. The Jordanians and the Egyptians occupied the old city and drove out all of the Jews who had been there for thousands of years. There's always been at least a small Jewish presence in Jerusalem throughout history from day one, and people forget about that. And even in Roman times, when Jews were banned on pain of death from visiting the ruins of Jerusalem, they did it anyway to sneak in and to see the ruins of our city and our temple. And in 1967, there was an opportunity. Har HaBayis B'Yadenu, the famous pronouncement that when they took the old city back, they broadcast it over the radio. Har HaBayis B'Yadenu, the Temple Mount is in our hands. First time in almost exactly 1,900 years after the destruction of the Second Temple. The Temple Mount was ours. We controlled it. And what did we do? This was a great opportunity. This is the message that God is sending to us. Har HaBayis B'Yadenu, 1967, 1,900 years of praying. Your prayers have been answered. The Har HaBayis is in our hands. And what did our people do? He gave it back because they were afraid. They didn't listen to the message of the Nevi'im. This is what we've been promised by our prophets for thousands of years. If you believe in this religion and you believe in this stuff, don't you believe in the message? Don't you believe in this, the truth of this? And you handed it back. You handed it back because they were afraid of people rather than afraid listening to this is the fulfillment of our prayers for thousands of years. was a blown opportunity, and we've been paying for it ever since. At that time, in 1967, had we decided we're going to keep the Temple Mount, who could have stopped us? This is where the fear of God was on the world. The Jews defeated everybody. In 6 days, the Jews, the most downtrodden, the weakest, the wimpiest, the most terrible, these Jews who've been stomped on for thousands of years, defeated the Arab armies with the backing of the Soviet Union. In 6 days, they wiped them off the face of the earth. And Temple Mount, Har Habayis Biyadenu, at that moment, and that was what the Navi was talking about. The house of Jacob will be a fire, and the house of Joseph is a flame. And the house of Edom will be straw to be incinerated before the fire. At that moment, the house of Edom was the straw, and we were the fire. And we could have set fire to the world. We could have had everything we wanted. But we didn't take it. We gave it back. The secular people were terrified of the world, and the religious people forgot about this is what you've been davening for. This is what you've been davening for, and you gave it back, and you rolled over, and you let it go. That was a great opportunity that was missed. But Hashem has mercy on our people. Just earlier this year, the Temple Mount crisis with the security cameras after the attack on it. Again, this is an opportunity. It's going to be more difficult. It wasn't so easy. You could have had it all in 1967. This year, it would have been more challenge, but we could have had it again. We had it effectively for 3 days. It was ours. There were no Muslims there. 3 days, they wouldn't set foot. 3 days, they said, and then what did we do? We handed it back. The secular leadership has no faith. They have no soul. And our religious leadership has no spine. And they have no guts. And this is what you've been davening for thousands of years. And then, but don't rock the boat. They say, this Mashiach is wonderful. Mashiach, save us. And then you're waiting for a miracle to fall on your head. But that's not what the Nevi'im say. In Zechariah, again, it's the Jewish people who go out and fight, and then the angel of the Lord leads them. You have to get up. You have to do it. We, as a people, human beings, we start the process. We drive the process. When we do it, then Hashem will stand astride Mount Zion, and then the angel of the Lord will say he'll help us. Not until we do something. And we have to take the rant. We have to stop being afraid. We have to believe in our prophets. We have to do it. And now, this is another time. This is another opportunity. God is saying to us, the nations of the world are going to stand aside. What can they do if President Trump says, I'm recognizing Jerusalem as the capital? I'm going to move the embassy to Jerusalem. What else? They can scream and they can rant and they can wave their fists and they can say, but what can they do? They can do nothing. This is the time where the nations of the world are impotent. This is where the house of Israel is strong and the house of Edom is weak. They can make noise, they can scream, they can yell, but what can they do to stop this? They can do nothing to stop this. And this is our time for our people and our people who believe. This is when we seize the opportunity. This is when we take the advantage of this. This is when the house of Jacob is a flame and the house of Joseph is a fire. This is when the enemies of ours will burn. This is what we need to do. You believe in this. This is what we say. Do you really believe in this? Do you really believe in it? And if you believe in it, you should be on the rooftops cheering. This is our time. This is our time to seize the opportunity. We've blown 2 opportunities in recent years. So many people in a lifetime of people, 2 opportunities. In my lifetime, we've blown the 1 with the Temple Mount. In the lifetime of my parents, 2 opportunities to turn to. God has handed us what we've been davening for in 1967. He handed it us with a ribbon tied onto it, and we blew it. And this past year, with the security camera thing. God said, it's yours. You had the opportunity to have it with tied up in a neat little bow, and now you blew it. But I'm going to give you a second chance. Here's your second chance. This time it's going to be a little bit harder, but take it. And it was ours, and we gave it back. This time it's going to be harder still. This is the worst possible way that it could happen. But this is the seed. This is the start. This, if we believe, if we do it, if we have faith that the messages of our Nevi'im, the messages of our Torah, the messages of our God for the last 2,500 years, 3,000 years, if you believe this is true, take advantage of it. This is the time. This is an opportunity. We can't blow this again, because who knows when another chance will come along. If we keep showing that we don't really care for it, if we're not really serious, if we're not willing to put our blood and our lives on the line for our faith and for what we believe in and for what is true and what is right, what do we deserve it? Then we don't deserve it. And that's the end. And people, this is what our book believes. If you believe in this stuff, if you really believe in Torah, if you really believe in the message, you need to believe in this. You need to value Yerushalayim and Har HaBayis, and know that it's something that is worth fighting for, is worth dying for, is worth spilling blood for, and is saying that there is no way that, we shouldn't stir the pot, we shouldn't make a mess, because people will get hurt or people will get killed. Well, if it's not worth getting hurt, not worth fighting for, not worth getting killed over, for Har HaBayis and for the promise that Hashem has made for us for 2,500 years in the Torah since the first, then what is worth fighting for? Then just give it up. You go back to your bagels, you go back to your lox, you go back to your strimal, you do and pretend it's your culture. It's your culture and it's your folk ways, and it's how are you any better than the Reform or the Reconstructionist or the Conservative if you don't believe it, if you're not willing to put your blood and your life into it. This is the advantage that the Muslims have over us. They are willing to die and put their blood for their beliefs. Are we willing to put our blood and our lives on the line for what we believe? And if we aren't, then they do deserve to have it, and we don't. Thank you very much. Then what are we doing here? If you don't believe in it, why do we do it? End of rant.